So friends, as Jeffrey Epstein's convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell tries to make one last-ditch attempt to get the Supreme Court to overturn her criminal conviction, there's a new twist. We've heard a lot about the Epstein files, the demands to release the Epstein files. Well, now Senator Dick Durbin of the Senate Judiciary Committee is demanding the Department of Justice turn over the Maxwell tapes. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, not one, but two Trump, Epstein, Maxwell stories broke today. Let's first take up Ghislaine Maxwell's new court filing with the Supreme Court, urging the Supreme Court to take her case up on appeal. Here is the new reporting from The Guardian. Headline: Epstein confidant and convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell urges Supreme Court to overturn her conviction. Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker and close confidant of Jeffrey Epstein, has urged the Supreme Court to take up her pending appeal and overturn her conviction, claiming that she was covered by an agreement Epstein made with federal authorities that shielded her from prosecution, CNN is reporting. Quote, "This case is about what the government promised, not what Epstein did," Maxwell's attorney told the justices in a new brief. Maxwell is serving 20 years in federal prison since 2022 for carrying out a years-long scheme with Epstein to groom and sexually abuse teenage girls. She has recently had meetings with Deputy Attorney General and former Donald Trump criminal defense attorney Todd Blanch for interviews amid a political firestorm over the Trump administration's mishandling of the Epstein case. Those talks were not mentioned in the latest Supreme Court filing, according to CNN. Asked earlier today if he would consider giving Maxwell a pardon, Donald Trump said, "Nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it, but right now it would be inappropriate to talk about it." He has previously not ruled it out, asserting that he has the power and authority to issue one. So friends, the question now becomes, what will the Supreme Court do? Will they accept Maxwell's case for review or not? Now, I would suggest there are at least a couple of reasons they should not accept her case for review. One of those reasons is legal. The other is cynical. The legal reason, there really is no, significant constitutional issue to be resolved in the Maxwell case. There really is no burning need for the Supreme Court to accept her case for review. The cynical reason? Well, if they accept the Maxwell case for review, that case is going to be kicking around for probably another year or so, giving Donald Trump's critics, his opponents, the people who care about the rule of law and accountability for sex traffickers of young girls, giving them plenty to talk about. It will keep the story alive. It will give the story legs. That may hurt Donald Trump. And how often have we seen those 6 right-wing Supreme Court justices do anything that might hurt Donald Trump? They forever seem to be interested in doing him a solid, giving him presidential immunity, ruling that even though what he does at times is unconstitutional, we're not going to let the American people protect themselves or let the federal judges protect the American people by issuing nationwide preliminary injunctions. Yeah, those 6 right-wing justices are forever looking to do Donald Trump a solid. So the cynical reason, maybe they help put an end to this case, at least in the courts, by just saying, rejected. We're done. with Ghislaine Maxwell, at least in the court system. Cynical, but, not necessarily inaccurate. Okay, let's turn to the second story, and it is that Senator Dick Durbin of the Senate Judiciary Committee has demanded of the Department of Justice and of Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney and current Deputy Attorney General #2 at the Department of Justice, Todd Blanch, demanded the Maxwell tapes, right? So everybody can see for themselves, rather than having to take Todd Blanch's word for anything, what the conversations with Maxwell were really like. Was it all about helping her craft and mold a story that would exonerate Donald Trump and, I don't know, implicate a bunch of Democrats? Or was it a straight-up interview by which they received information, truthful, accurate information, hopefully from Ghislaine Maxwell, and now they have to go about investigating it, seeing if they can corroborate it, seeing if it's credible or not? That's the way these kind of debriefings, these kind of meetings go. I've had hundreds of them with witnesses, defendants, aspiring cooperators. So Senator Dick Durbin understandably is demanding the Maxwell tapes. So now we've got demands for release of the Epstein files, the client list, and a demand for release of the Maxwell tapes. Because, transparency. Here's the new reporting about Senator Dick Durbin's new demand. This from the New York Times. Headline: Durbin demands tapes of Ghislaine Maxwell interviews. And that article begins, Senator Richard Durbin of Illinois, the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, on Monday demanded all recordings and transcripts of the July 24 and 25 Justice Department interviews with Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime partner of Jeffrey Epstein, who is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. In a letter to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanch, who conducted the interviews, Mr. Durbin also demanded that the Justice Department commit to offering no pardon or commutation of Maxwell's sentence in exchange for information, citing serious questions about the potential for a corrupt bargain between the Trump administration and Ghislaine Maxwell. The letter, a copy of which was obtained by the New York Times, was co-signed by Senator Sheldon, Whitehouse, Democrat of Rhode Island, who also sits on the Judiciary Committee. Because Democrats are in the minority and have no subpoena power, their demands may carry little weight with Mr. Blanch, but the letter reflected how Democrats are trying to keep pressure on the Trump administration on an issue that has, at least for now, cleaved from the president, a portion of his typically loyal MAGA base that is demanding a release of files that the administration has refused to make public. Epstein, a financier who was charged with sex trafficking and died in 2019, was well connected, and his friends included Donald Trump. In the letter, Mr. Durbin noted that the meetings between Blanch and Maxwell last week were highly unusual. Such interviews would typically be conducted by line prosecutors more familiar with the details of the case and more able to determine on the spot if Maxwell was lying, he noted in the letter. That Blanch himself conducted the interviews, Durbin wrote, led him and Mr. Whitehouse to believe that the meetings were another tactic to distract from DOJ's failure to fulfill Attorney General Bondi's commitment that the American people would see the full Epstein files. Mr. Durbin also wrote that there were serious concerns that Maxwell may provide false information or selectively withhold information in return for a pardon or sentence commutation. Quote, the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein have been repeatedly let down by the criminal justice system, the letter states. Rather than engaging in this elaborate ruse, DOJ should simply release the Epstein files as Attorney General Bondi promised to do. Well, folks, it looks like we now have a new batch of evidence to add to this depraved, Trump, Epstein, Maxwell debacle. First, we were talking about the Epstein files and the Epstein client list, right? We were forever being told the Epstein files will be released to the public. And Attorney General Bondi actually said in response to a question about the Epstein client list, it is on my desk for review, with the inference being she would release it. So Epstein files and Epstein client list. Now we have the Maxwell tapes, the recordings that would have been made of this, 9-hour meeting or series of meetings that Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney, Todd Blanch, had with Ghislaine Maxwell. And the reason I continue to emphasize that Todd Blanch was Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney is because in that capacity, he would have come into all kinds of information, that Donald Trump had. And that information, Donald Trump's secrets that, you tend to tell only your criminal defense attorney when he's preparing to defend you against 34 felony charges. That one didn't turn out so good for Donald Trump. All of that information that Todd Blanch has about Donald Trump's secrets, Todd Blanch is still the keeper of those secrets. Why? Because the attorney-client privilege, it outlasts the attorney-client relationship. So as we sit here today, and as he was engaged in interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell, Todd Blanch was still the keeper of attorney-client privileged information and secrets from Donald Trump, which is why he was the exact wrong person to sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell. Can you say conflict 101? But of course, the goal was not to get the truth out of Ghislaine Maxwell. It feels more like it was to craft a story that would help Donald Trump, right? Maybe hurting some Democrats in the process. So now Senator Dick Durbin has demanded the Maxwell tapes because I, for one, would not believe a word that comes out of Todd Blanch's mouth about what Ghislaine Maxwell said. We have to see the videotapes or hear the audio tape recordings of those interviews to make sure it was an honest discussion about the information that Ghislaine Maxwell truly has about Donald Trump and others vis-a-vis Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal conspiracy, for which Ghislaine Maxwell stands convicted. So would it surprise you, friends, if the next thing we hear from Todd Blanch is something along the lines of, I'm in receipt of a letter from Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse demanding the recordings of the interviews I conducted with Ghislaine Maxwell. You see, here's the thing. We didn't record them. No, we just, we took really good notes, and I had an assistant there who, taking down everything Ms. Maxwell said. Would that surprise you, friends, if that is the next thing we hear from Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney about what he did or didn't do in connection with the interviews of Ghislaine Maxwell? And if that is what we are told, then it will be proved to my satisfaction that the whole endeavor was nothing more than an attempt to cover up the truth. So, Lordy, let's hope there are tapes. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.